Hi, I'm Cassiopeia, and this is the story of how I was erased by my own family and how I decided I wouldn't stay invisible. It started with a lie, not the kind that slips between siblings and fades by bedtime. This one rewrote my life. My sister Lila had always been the sun in our house. She shone in every room, absorbed every ounce of pride our parents had to give. Meanwhile, I learned to love the shadows because they didn't ask me to compete. That night, the house felt off the moment I stepped through the door. Quiet, too quiet. The kind that doesn't mean peace but tension, bottled tight. My mother was standing in the living room, with her arms crossed like a gate. My father was silent on the couch, his face pale and turned slightly away. "Where were you?" Mom asked sharply, not concerned, suspicious. "Library, why?" She threw a small velvet box at my feet. Inside, a pair of earrings, diamond studs, gleamed coldly up at me. My grandmother's. They were supposed to be Lila's. "She said you took them," Mom said, "and now they're in your drawer." I blinked. My heart dropped. "I didn't—" "She wouldn't lie about something like this," Mom cut in, voice rising. "We trusted you. You live under this roof and you steal from your own sister?" "I didn't take anything, Mom. Someone planted those there." "You calling your sister a liar?" "No," I said. "I'm saying she's very good at pretending." And then came the explosion. "You ungrateful little— Get out! Get out of this house right now!" I looked at my dad. Just once. I didn't need him to yell or throw himself between us. I just needed him to look at me like I was still his daughter. He didn't even lift his eyes. My fingers trembled as I grabbed my coat. It was January. I had no plan, no money, no clue where I was going. Just my phone, my ID, and the echo of my mom's scream as the door slammed behind me. 3 nights on couches, one on a bus stop bench, one with a stranger from campus who lent me a couch and a warm shower. I told them my name was Cass. I told them I was figuring things out. I didn't tell them my own mother had kicked me out over a lie. I slept with my phone on silent. The buzzing started on day 4. Dozens of missed calls. Mom, Dad, even Lila. Then texts started rolling in. "Call me back, please. Something's happened. Come home. It's about Lila." I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. I needed to figure out if this sudden guilt trip was another manipulation. On day 7, there were over 100 missed calls. That night, as I lay curled under an old blanket, I thought about how lies grow roots. They split families. They build walls. But they also open doors. I didn't know what was waiting for me back home. But I knew one thing. I wasn't the same girl who walked out. Ever had someone accuse you of something so convincingly, you started to question yourself? The thing about people who are used to winning, like Lila, is that when they fall, they don't know how to do it quietly. They take everything down with them: noise, spectacle, shrapnel. The louder the collapse, the more desperate they are to pretend it's not happening. I didn't plan on going back. Not after the way they erased me. But pain has a strange gravity. When it pulls, it doesn't just ask, it demands. It was the 112th missed call that I finally answered. "Cassie!" My mom's voice cracked, like she wasn't used to speaking gently. "Lila's been suspended from work. We need to talk. I know you're angry, but this is serious." I stayed silent. I could hear something rustling in the background. Panic, maybe. Or guilt. "She's being investigated for forging financial reports at her firm," she continued. "There's media coverage. Her boss called us. They're saying it's going to trial." I didn't know whether to laugh or vomit. For a second, all I could picture was Lila. Flawless, poised, the daughter in control, now being stared down in a glass office, stripped of that perfect facade. "So now I matter again?" I said quietly. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." I hung up. But her words sat with me. I wanted to stay detached. Detached was safe. Detached was power. But detachment was also fake, and I was done lying to myself. 2 weeks later, I stood across the street from the law firm where Lila used to work. Barton and Connors, white and glass and soulless. Her name had been scraped off the front display like it had never been there. I wasn't stalking her. I was studying the aftermath. I watched from a coffee shop, sipping bitter espresso like it could harden me. People walked in and out, but Lila didn't appear, probably too humiliated to show her face. "Excuse me," a voice said beside me. A man in his late 20s, tailored suit, kind eyes. "Are you Cassie? Lila's sister?" I froze. "Depends on who's asking." "I'm Alan. I used to be on Lila's team. We worked together a lot." My stomach tensed. "I saw your picture on her desk once. She never talked much about you, but you look alike." "She wouldn't want you saying that," I muttered. He smiled, but it faded quickly. "She messed up. But honestly, I always thought she was under so much pressure from your family. Not that it's an excuse." "From our family?" He nodded. "Your mom used to call the office. She'd ask about Lila's performance. Once she even came in, made a scene. Told our boss Lila deserved a promotion." I blinked. "She what?" He laughed, dry and uncomfortable. "Yeah, I figured if anyone would understand what it's like to live under that, it'd be you." Something in me shifted. That kind of maternal meddling wasn't surprising, but hearing it confirmed made me feel like I'd spent years drowning with an anchor tied to my ankle, and now someone else had finally seen the rope. "She was their star," I said. "Everything they wanted, everything I wasn't." "Maybe they never saw you clearly." Alan's words weren't sympathy. They were observation, sharp and unflinching. That night, I walked past my old house. The porch light was still broken. Lila used to hate that. The front yard looked tired, like the house had exhaled and never breathed back in. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. I saw enough through the living room window, Mom sitting rigid on the couch, Dad reading the paper, unread, and Lila, shoulders hunched, makeup gone, hands twisting in her lap like she was trying to wring out the shame. There it was, the fall. Not from grace, but from image. I had spent years wondering if maybe, just maybe, I'd overreacted. That maybe I was sensitive, emotional, overdramatic. But no, I had been clear. And now, so was the truth. 3 days later, Lila called me directly. First time in months. Her voice was flat. "I know you're watching." I didn't deny it. "I screwed up, bad, but you don't get to be smug. You left. You didn't even try to help." I laughed, cold and soft. "Help? Like you helped me when Mom accused me of stealing? That wasn't supposed to happen like that." "You planted the earrings." A pause. Then, slowly, "Yeah." Silence expanded between us. "Why?" I asked. She hesitated. "Because you were starting to get noticed. Mom talked about you getting good grades. Dad actually went to your art show. I couldn't stand it. You needed them to love you more than they loved me." "No," she said. "I needed them to only love me." That was the difference. And that was the truth. There's something surgical about being erased. It's never just one big cut. It's hundreds of small incisions over time, until you wake up and realize you're a ghost in your own life. And sometimes, even ghosts learn how to haunt. I didn't answer Lila's texts after our call. I didn't block her either. Letting them talk into a void was more satisfying than slamming a door. I knew she'd reach out again. People like her don't apologize just once. They try to rewrite their own apologies into redemptions. But I wasn't buying absolution. Not this time. I moved into a cheap studio apartment 2 train stops from campus. It smelled faintly of mold and microwaved regret, but it was mine. No one could burst in unannounced. No one could throw accusations like knives and expect silence as payment. For the first time in years, I breathed. One evening, I came across an old email. A university notice from my junior year. An art exhibit I'd been selected for. Back then, I printed the flyer and pinned it to the fridge, beaming like it meant something. The next morning, it was gone. Lila had replaced it with one of her internship commendations. That memory felt different now. Not just painful, strategic. My sister hadn't simply hurt me. She had deleted me, inch by inch, and they all helped her do it. I opened an old backup folder on my drive. Dozens of files from high school. Family photos, scanned report cards, letters. One file stood out. A voice memo. Labeled simply, Basement. I hit play. It was faint. My mother's voice filtered through a dusty recorder. You will not keep that baby. Do you hear me, Lila? I don't care who the father is. We're not raising any scandal. You have a future, and you're not going to throw it away for a mistake. Lila's voice followed, sobbing, incoherent. The audio cut off there, just enough to be damning. I stared at the screen. My heart wasn't pounding. It was steady, cold. This wasn't just family drama. This was legacy. This was the blueprint of everything they built. On fear, on silence, on curated perfection. My sister, the golden girl, had been broken long before she broke me. And my mother wasn't just cruel. She was calculated. 2 days later, I returned to the house, not as a daughter, but as a visitor. Lila opened the door. Her hair was limp, her eyes rimmed red. Cassie? She said, like the name hurt. I didn't smile. I'm not here to fight. She stepped aside. I walked in and felt the weight of old air. Memories, unspoken things, ghosts. Mom sat in the kitchen, arms folded. She didn't look surprised. Dad stayed in the living room, pretending to read. Everyone here had mastered the art of pretending. I found the audio, I said flatly. Mom blinked. What audio? You know which one. Silence. You threatened her, I said. You silenced her, and then you praised her for being strong. That's not strength, that's submission. Mom stood slowly. You have no idea what it was like. No, I cut in. You made sure I never would. Lila spoke up. I was scared. I thought, maybe if I did everything right, she'd forgive me. She didn't forgive you, I said. She erased what made you human. And you passed that down to me. Mom's voice rose. We did what we had to do. That pregnancy would have ruined her future. You ruined her anyway, I snapped. And you used me as the control experiment. That night, I uploaded the audio. I didn't title it Revenge. I titled it What They Did to Their Daughters. I didn't expect it to go viral, but it did. Within 3 days, parenting forums, local news blogs, even a podcast picked it up. Not just because it was scandalous, but because it was familiar. Too many people recognized the voice, not my mother's, but the tone, the fear, the manipulation, the demand for perfection at the cost of everything else. That's when people started sharing their own stories, commenting, emailing. One line kept repeating, "This is the mother I grew up with." Lila called me from a private number. You uploaded it? I did. I'm going to lose everything. You already lost everything that mattered. A long pause. Why didn't you delete it? She asked quietly. Because I needed the world to see us, I said. Not the picture, the wound. If the past was a knife, then reputation was the ribbon they used to wrap it in and call it love. But ribbons fray, and sometimes they burn. The fallout from the audio was immediate and violent, not in blood, but in silence. My mother stopped answering her phone. My father stopped leaving the house. My sister stopped speaking to the world, but not to me. We met at a cheap diner halfway between my apartment and the house. Lila wore sunglasses despite the overcast skies. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of exposure had crushed the performance out of her. I wanted to meet somewhere private, she said. No cameras, no microphones. There never were, I replied. She removed her sunglasses, and for the first time, I saw her eyes without armor. I know I can't undo it, she said, but I need you to know, I wasn't always like this. I stirred my coffee. You were scared, I get it, but fear doesn't make you cruel. Choice does. She swallowed hard. You don't know what she was like with me behind closed doors. I don't? I raised an eyebrow. You think she spared me? No. But with you, she ignored. With me, she controlled. It was the first time Lila admitted she hadn't been loved, only polished. She made me compete with a ghost, she continued. Her idea of the perfect daughter, obedient, polished, unbreakable. I just didn't realize the ghost was you. That hit deeper than I wanted it to. Later that night, I received an email. Subject: Your family, your fight. Podcast inquiry. A major podcast producer wanted to interview me. They weren't interested in scandal. They wanted a discussion about intergenerational harm, family image, and emotional exile. I stared at the screen, unsure. Sharing my pain had started as a release, but it was turning into a narrative, a symbol. Was I ready for that? I forwarded the email to Lila without comment. She responded with one sentence. If you're going to speak, speak fully. That was the moment I realized Lila didn't want redemption anymore. She wanted release. I accepted the interview, not live, but recorded. The studio was cold and clinical. The host, a soft-voiced woman named Jessa, made me feel safe without trying too hard. We talked for 2 hours. I told the whole story. Not just what they did, but what it made me believe. I used to think, I said, that if I became small enough, silent enough, invisible enough, I'd be safe. But all that did was teach them how to pretend I didn't exist. Jessa nodded. And now? Now, I said, I'm learning that being seen is dangerous, but so is disappearing. And at least one of those risks lets you breathe. The episode aired 3 days later. It was titled, The Family Who Erased Me, and What I Did with the Silence. The reaction was unlike anything I expected. People didn't pity me. They saw themselves in me. I became a mirror, not a hero, not a victim, just a voice. And then came the message. It was a private Instagram DM from a woman named Camille. She said she was my mother's half-sister. I've been watching your story, she wrote. I believe you, because she did the same to me when I was 16. Attached was a photo. A girl with my mother's eyes, in a courtroom, crying. The headline read, Teenager Sent Away After Family Dispute. I stared at the screen. Time folded in. My mother wasn't the origin of this cycle. She was another link in the chain. I called Camille. What happened to you? I asked. She told everyone I was unstable, that I was addicted, that I ran away. But really, I got pregnant. And she convinced our father to send me to a reform camp. My blood ran cold. She told me once, Camille continued, that daughters were meant to represent the family, not ruin it. You were never going to win, Cassie, not with her rules. I hung up and stared into the dark. This wasn't about me. It never was. This was a system, one that passed itself down like jewelry, except instead of gold, it was guilt. Justice doesn't always show up in courtrooms. Sometimes it slips into inboxes, appears on voicemail, or shows up in front of you wearing a suit and a name tag you didn't expect to see again. It started with a wedding invitation. Lila's ex-fiancé, Matthew, the same man who broke things off a week after her scandal hit the press, was getting married. The envelope landed in my mailbox with no return address, just a silver seal and script letters that felt like mockery. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but seeing his name sparked something sharper than anger, curiosity. I remembered things now, moments I hadn't let myself connect before, like how he'd ask about me at dinners when I was still living at home. Not inappropriately, just more than Lila ever liked, and how she'd once caught me talking to him at a family BBQ and didn't speak to me for 3 days. There was a story here, one I hadn't dared touch. I RSVP'd, yes. The wedding was held in a museum atrium, gilded ceilings, string quartet, every seat filled with the kind of people who made eye contact like currency. Lila wasn't there, but her name floated through the crowd like perfume. People still remembered, still whispered. Matthew found me near the wine table, alone. Didn't expect you, he said, eyes searching mine. You invited me. He smiled briefly. I wanted to make sure you were okay. After everything. Define okay? He nodded slowly. You were always different from them. I leaned in. Why did you break it off? He hesitated. She lied to me, about you. A beat. She told me you were obsessed with me, he said, eyes soft with apology. She showed me texts she claimed you sent. Said you tried to sabotage us. I stared at him. I never sent anything. I know, he said. I figured it out later. But by then, it was already… He didn't finish. He didn't need to. When I got home, I pulled up Lila's old Facebook account. Still active, still curated. Perfect pictures, perfect captions, no trace of the storm. But I knew better now. She hadn't just framed me for theft. She'd burned bridges I didn't even know existed. And she wasn't alone in doing it. I compiled everything, screenshots, emails, voice notes. I built a digital time capsule of the Cassie they tried to erase. Then I sent it to former family friends, school contacts, even the local PTA mom who once called me such a moody little thing. No context, just facts, truth. And their silence in return said enough. A week later, I ran into my father at a gas station. We made eye contact as I filled up. He hesitated, then approached slowly like I might vanish. I saw what you posted, he said. Everyone has. I know. Do you feel better now? No, I said. But I feel seen. He looked away. We didn't know what she was doing. Your mother always… Stop, I cut in. You knew. You just didn't stop her. He didn't defend himself. For the first time in years, he looked small. Not cruel, not angry, just tired. I'm sorry, he said. It didn't land like it should have. Apologies without action don't stick. That night, Lila texted me one word. Why? I replied. Because no one else ever would. The invitation didn't come by phone or text. It came in a stiff white envelope, addressed in my mother's handwriting. Deliberate, looped, too formal to be maternal. Inside, a note. Dinner this Sunday. We'd like to talk, as a family. Not an apology. Not even a plea. Just a summons. I arrived at 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. Power, after all, is often in timing. The house looked exactly the same. Pristine lawn, overwatered hydrangeas, porch lights still broken. Like time had paused right after I left, and everyone had been too scared to press play again. Lila opened the door. Her eyes flickered between defiance and exhaustion. You came. You asked. Inside, the dining table was already set. China, crystal glasses, linen napkins folded like origami secrets. My mother stood at the head of the table, spine straight, lips pressed in a line so tight it could cut glass. My father, as always, lingered in the background, present enough to witness, too weak to intervene. I thought we should talk, Mom began. I sat slowly. Let's. The meal started with silence. Cutlery moved, wine poured. Small talk was attempted and immediately suffocated. Finally, she spoke. Cassiopeia, I know things have gotten… complicated. I stared at her. Is that the word we're going with? Not cruel, not abusive, not systemically manipulative, just complicated? Lila flinched. I didn't come here for closure, I said, voice even. I came for clarity. And what would that entail? Mom asked. I reached into my bag and placed a small device on the table. Pressed play. It was a voice recording, not the old one, the new one, from 2 days ago. A phone call between my mother and her sister, Camille. She's twisting everything, my mother had said. She always had a flair for dramatics. That girl will never be happy unless she's destroying someone else's life. Camille's voice had been firm. Or maybe she's finally telling the truth. And you're just not used to being on the other end of it. The recording ended. Silence followed, thick and sharp. My mother looked at me, her face pale but not shocked, just cornered. You recorded me. I preserved the narrative, I replied. Since you're so good at rewriting them. Dad looked down. Lila shifted in her seat. I didn't ask to be invited back into this family, I continued. You called me. You needed me here so you could manage the damage. But you don't get to do that anymore. My mother's voice was cold steel. What do you want from us? I want you to stop pretending you ever loved me unconditionally. I want you to stop hiding behind performance and start living in the ruins you created. Cassie, my father started, finally speaking. No, I interrupted. You had your chance. You watched her erase me. You let her. His mouth opened, then closed. And then came the twist. Lila stood. Her voice was quiet but clear. I'm moving out, she said. Our mother snapped toward her. What? I'm done playing perfect. I'm done trying to win a game where every rule changes depending on who's watching. Mom's face contorted. Don't you dare! Too late, Lila said. You raised us in a house of mirrors and expected us not to bleed from the glass. She turned to me. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I'm trying to be done with all of it. For once, I believed her. I left that night not with closure, but confirmation. This wasn't a reconciliation. It was an exorcism. And for the first time, I felt something close to free. Freedom doesn't always feel like a victory. Sometimes, it feels like standing in the middle of an open road, unsure whether you're escaping or arriving. 2 months after that final dinner, I walked past my childhood home one last time. The hydrangeas were gone. The porch light had finally been replaced. The lawn looked freshly cut, but the windows were dark. Empty, they'd moved. No forwarding address, no announcement, just gone. I didn't knock, I didn't linger. I had nothing to reclaim from that place anymore. Lila didn't reach out again, not directly, but she posted an open essay online under a different name. I recognized the voice immediately. She called it Unlearning Inheritance. In it, she wrote, when your family teaches you to suppress everything, pain, truth, joy, you start mistaking silence for peace. But silence isn't peace, it's debt, and some of us are done paying it. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get, and maybe the only one I needed. I graduated in the spring with honors. No family photos, no bouquet-waving parents in the crowd, just me, my name over the loudspeaker, and a sky that didn't collapse. Alan, the man who'd once worked with Lila, was there. Not as a romantic interest, just a witness, a person who saw me outside of their context. You did it, he said after the ceremony. I survived it, I corrected. He nodded. That too. Later that summer, I started working with a nonprofit focused on family estrangement and youth homelessness. Not because I wanted to dwell, but because I finally understood the cost of being erased, and how many people were living without a nameplate, without proof of belonging. At a conference, I shared my story, condensed, anonymized, but real. And after, a girl with shaking hands came up to me. My mom tells people I'm dead, she said. I looked her in the eye. You're not. And in that moment, I realized why I'd done all this. Not to destroy, but to document. To prove to others, and to myself, that survival is not silence. It's sound. It's story. It's truth. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single sentence. I heard the podcast. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I recognized my father's handwriting. I didn't cry. I didn't respond. But I folded the letter and put it in a box, next to old report cards, photos, and that voice memo from the basement. Not as a keepsake, as evidence. Time passed, and something unexpected happened. I started to miss things, not the people, but the feeling of being tethered, of having a place, even a broken one, to say I was from. But then I built my own. A small studio in Brooklyn, filled with plants, thrifted art, and music I wasn't ashamed to love out loud. I painted again. I hosted friends who became family. I learned how to cook without judgment hovering over my shoulder. One night, as the rain tapped the windows and the city glowed like a quiet heartbeat, I realized the throne they tried to place on Lila's head, it was never real, because power built on lies always crumbles. And now, that throne, once fought over, once polished and coveted, was empty, and I didn't want it. I had something better, a life. If you've ever walked away from the only world you knew, just to find your voice again, you're not alone. Sometimes healing isn't about going back, it's about choosing not to. I used to think being part of a family meant shrinking myself to fit inside someone else's narrative. But silence never protected me. Speaking up did. And the truth? It didn't set me free, it rebuilt me. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own home, know this: you're not alone. Family doesn't end with blood. It begins with respect, honesty, and love that doesn't come with conditions. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from something familiar to find peace? Or maybe you're still searching. Share your thoughts, your city, or just how this story made you feel. If this video touched something in you, consider subscribing for more stories that dive deep into the real, raw parts of life. Let's keep the conversation going.